The Musargan campaign begins, September 26, 1918. Although the Musargan campaign is little remembered today, it was the greatest U.S. military contribution to World War I and the opening act of the American century. The 47 autumn days of brutal fighting claimed 26,277 American lives, making it the deadliest battle in the nation's history, and left nearly 100,000 doughboys wounded. This sacrifice materially contributed to the collapse of the German army. It earned Woodrow Wilson a major role in crafting the peace that followed. And it demonstrated that the U.S., which had generally avoided great power entanglements, had the will and ability to assume a major role on the world stage by using its vast military, political and economic power to secure its global interests and further the nation's worldview. But the Musargan also highlights the fact that hard-won victories do not always lead to a just and enduring peace, a lesson that is as crucial today as it was back then. Bryan and Darrow face off in the Scopes trial, July 20, 1925. When populist politician William Jennings Bryan faced off against attorney Clarence Darrow, it was the highlight of the Scopes trial, a case about teaching evolution in Tennessee that had captured national attention, and the capstone of the fundamentalist modernist controversy in the Protestant churches. Darrow grilled Bryan on his interpretation of well-known Bible stories. Did he really believe that the whale swallowed Jonah, that Joshua made the sun stand still and that Adam and Eve were the first people? Bryan answered yes, but Darrow made him admit he didn't know how these things happened and didn't know any geology or ancient history. The big city journalists reported that Darrow had revealed Bryan's ignorance and the absurdity of his biblical literalism. The great commoner died 5 days later, as if the defeat had killed him. The fundamentalists retreated from battle, dismissed by the rest of society, but flourished under the radar of the press, planting churches from California to Virginia. In 1979, Jerry Falwell surprised everyone by launching a powerful political movement of fundamentalists and other conservative evangelicals. 37 years later, with white evangelical voters making up more than a quarter of the electorate, the Christian right helped elect Donald Trump. The Dust Bowl hits its most infamous day, April 14, 1935. When people think about the Dust Bowl, they tend to consider it as a discrete event, something that happened once and will never happen again. It was unique. 1934 was the worst drought in 1,000 years of North American history, a time when rolling dusters swept across the country, depositing tons of topsoil on Chicago and Washington, D.C. The need to cope with what's been called the worst man-made ecological catastrophe in our history launched the New Deal, setting the stage for political battles over big government that are still raging. But now it's happening again, thanks to climate change. 100-mile-wide walls of dust have swept through Phoenix, as severe drought kills grasses and ground cover, leaving soil exposed. It's a pattern playing out on a planetary scale, sending millions of refugees fleeing sub-Saharan Africa. Scientists now warn that the future may bring a perpetual, global dust bowl. The bald eagle gets federal protection, June 8, 1940. Americans can attribute increased sightings of their national bird largely to the Bald Eagle Protection Act. Congress passed the act in 1940 to check the slaughterous impact of recreational shooters, egg collectors and livestock farmers. Never before had the federal government established protection for an individual species or top predator. The move set a precedent for future wildlife laws, including the Endangered Species Act (ESA). Aggressive enforcement of the Bald Eagle Protection Act, along with listing the bald eagle under the ESA and banning the use of DDT, reversed a population collapse in the lower 48 states after pesticides and habitat loss had reduced breeding pairs to 487 in 1963. With the SA delisting in 2007 and the Department of the Interior downgrading bird protection this year, the Historic Act remains the principal legal safeguard for this exclusively North American bird, now thriving nationwide with numbers above 40,000. President Truman orders racial equality in the military, July 26, 1948. When President Truman issued Executive Order 9981 on July 26, 1948, he acknowledged that racial segregation hampered the U.S.'s military readiness and damaged its standing in the world. The order, which declared, "There shall be equality of treatment and opportunity for all persons in the armed forces without regard to race, color, religion, or national origin," started the slow process of integrating the military at a time when every other national institution save Major League Baseball remained rigidly segregated. Truman also repaid the patriotism African Americans had demonstrated in World War II despite the segregated conditions under which they trained and fought. Blacks had supported the war effort overwhelmingly, but on their own terms. They rallied around the concept of a double victory, aiming to defeat Nazism overseas and racism at home. Having helped to defeat Hitler, they now had a president on the record saying that Jim Crow had to go. Mass movements for civil rights have ebbed and flowed in the years since, but Truman's actions proved how much of a difference having a supporter of civil rights for all Americans in the White House could make. President Eisenhower effectively bans LGBT people from government. April 27, 1953. President Trump's recent call to ban most transgender people from serving in the military was not the first time a U.S. president used his position to exclude LGBT people from government service. That dubious honor goes to President Dwight D. Eisenhower, whose Executive Order 10450, issued 65 years ago, included sexual perversion, a stigmatizing term for homosexuality, as grounds for dismissal from federal government jobs. Thousands of suspected gays and lesbians lost their jobs. The executive order was part of a broader anti-gay lavender scare that accompanied the anti-communist Red Scare of the same era. And it inspired a fledgling gay rights movement, which actively opposed it. The ban on gays and lesbians in the federal civil service was not reversed until 1975. 5 years later, President Jimmy Carter endorsed the first major party platform that included a gay rights plank.